Hello and welcome. I know I promised these videos about 8 months ago, but flight school. Once you get here, you'll understand. In any event, this video is going to be about what basic training is like, and not just in general, but what basic training is like as an O9 whiskey or warrant officer candidate. And to be honest, it's basically the same as anybody else. I went through the same basic training as all the 13 boom booms. If you didn't know, I went to basic training at Fort Sill in Oklahoma, home of artillery. And yeah, I mean, there's a few more expectations placed on you. Especially depending on how old you are, not so much as an officer or warrant officer candidate. There might be some more or less, just more expectations placed on you. One of the big things I will say is when you get to basic training, 99.9% of the people there will not know what an O9 whiskey is. They'll know what an O9 Sierra is, absolutely. That's an officer candidate. But they'll look at O9 whiskey and they'll be like, "What? What's that?" And I just told them what it was. I was just an honest person. I was like, "Hey, the thing, you have some choices. You could say you're an officer, you're a warrant officer candidate, or you could say you're a helicopter pilot. I would just say you're a warrant officer candidate, or just say you're a waft. Depending on, some people like to lie low. They think that the drill sergeants won't. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, even if the drill sergeant's singing you out a little bit, you're gonna have a little bit more work to do. You're gonna be an officer in the United States Army. You're always gonna have a little bit more work to do. So you might as well just get used to it. And yeah, so personally for me, like I said, everything's kind of the same. And the reason I'm not really going into a day by day kind of thing is because there's plenty of videos out there about what basic training is like, from day one all the way through, I don't even, it was 4 weeks later, right? Sorry, 12 weeks later. And it's just not worth it for me. There's a lot more that I want to cover in Warrant Officer Candidate School, SEER School, Warrant Officer Basic Course, and of course, Flight School. So if you're wondering whether or not you should drop a flight packet, what it's going to be like, I am at the tail end of initial entry rotor wing school right now, and that's what I really want to talk about. So unless anybody has pressing questions about what it's like to be an officer candidate in basic training, it's basically the same thing as everybody else. You might be bay boss, which means that you're in charge of the bay, you're in charge of keeping it clean, you're in charge of having all the cleaning supplies, and in charge of making sure that in the morning when the drill sergeants get to wake you up at 5 o'clock in the morning, that everything's nice and clean. So you might have a few more responsibilities. On the FTXs, you might be placed as platoon leader. You won't be placed as platoon sergeant, that's for sure. You'll always be platoon leader because you're going to be an officer. And yeah, so don't play it up. Don't be like, "Oh, I'm going to be a helicopter pilot," or whatever. Don't be the cocky guy. You're not a helicopter pilot yet. You got to get through basic training. A few tips and tricks. Keep your head down, keep your eye on the prize. Basic training is a terrible place. It just is. There's no other way around it. It's not absolutely horrible, but I would hate to stay there any longer than what's absolutely necessary. That environment is just made to induce stress. Although now, they got rid of the shark attack, so you don't have to worry about that. I guess it's the first 100 yards now, which I don't really know what that means, but not my problem. You guys will all have to deal with it when you get there. I'm sure there are plenty of videos out there about the first 100 yards. It's about teamwork or something. The shark attack itself wasn't bad. It was also about teamwork, so I don't know what is different, but maybe you all will be able to tell me. The FTXs are rough for sure, but just remember this, and as motivation or whatever, at least you're getting fed 3 meals a day. All right, so when everything's kind of shitty and sucky, you look back and you're like, hey, I've got food in my pocket that I can eat whenever I want. Because that's the other thing in basic is you can only eat during chow times, but at least at my basic, when you were on FTX, there was no contraband in terms of food. You could save that first strike bar that came in your MRE, or save those Skittles for the late night snacks, or trade them later for something else. So it's always nice. So remember that when you're in FTX and you're tired and you're hungry, but you're not that hungry because you've been eating 3 square meals a day. And I will say, basic training is all about being tired. You're just constantly tired, and it's not particularly hard. If you could just get one more hour of sleep every night, it would be so much better. It would be easier. But obviously it's meant to keep you're functioning. You can function, but there will be days when you're just tired. And sleep is everything in basic training, and it's just a constant grind, right? And sleep and time are everything. So if you can manage your time right, and if you can manage your sleep right, go to sleep when it's sleep time. Don't stay up and bullshit with the other trainees. A little bit is fine. It's good for morale. You have to do it. But I'm telling you, especially at my old age, some of those 18-year-old kids, man, they were running laps around me for sure. But sleep is the most important thing, and that's what they're going to take away from you. And that's how they really control you. It's pretty terrible. But anyway, this is just a quick video of my personal thoughts on basic training. If anybody has any questions, drop them in the comments, and I'll either write a response in the comments, or if there's enough comments for that, and let's face it, I don't really get that many comments, I'll make another video. But just a quick thing on what basic training is like as an 09 whiskey.